Hello and welcome. 30 years after the Berlin Wall came crashing down, we all let out this massive sigh of relief, thinking the nightmare of superpower showdown was finally over. But here we are, and now the rules have changed. The players wear different jerseys, and it's hitting you where it hurts most at the gas pump when you fill up your tank, on your heating bill when winter hits, and in the headlines that keep you scrolling at 2 a.m. and keep you wake up. And you wonder what the hell is coming next? What is going to happen now? What after the Iran US war? So, what is the new Cold War? So, all of it quietly traces back to the decisions that were made in 1990s that most people have already forgotten, and people who were born in 90s, they actually do not know about those decisions. And the craziest part, just weeks ago when the US and Israeli forces launched those massive strikes on Iran, nearly 900 in a single day, Russia and China did not sit on the sidelines. They stepped in. And how they stepped in? They stepped in quietly, covertly, with intelligence, and I must say a lot of intelligence, with tech facilities and economic lifelines. And those economic lifelines actually kept this war burning. This isn't history repeating. I must remind you, this is the old Cold War game with a brand new rule book. I am Dr. Adeel, and for years I have been in the newsroom where these stories actually break, digging through the cables, the memos, the quiet admissions that never make the nightly news. This is In Focus with Dr. Adeel. Now, stay with me because what I'm about to lay out isn't just another history lesson. This is about why your gas prices spiked in 2022 and 2026, why Washington keep writing blank checks to other nations or to control a conflict or to fund a conflict, and other nations while quietly builds biggest navy the Pacific has ever seen. I'm talking about China and Russia, and why the whole post-Cold War story that was told to us turned out to be, I'll use this word incomplete. I won't say incorrect, it's incomplete. So here is the uncomfortable truth which I want to actually put right front of you. And most of the time, the legacy media or the media in the United States, it will not touch this. The Cold War never ended. It just changed its rules. The Soviet Union collapsed, and for sure we know it was collapsed. But the deep logic that drove great powers competition, spheres of influence, and fears of encirclements and zero-sum thinking about security never went away. People in the West convinced themselves, and there was only one idea, that the liberal democracy and open markets would sweep the planet and that history itself had basically ended. And that bet, my friends, is exactly why you are staring at the mess you are in today. Think about it the way you think about your own family budget. After the big crisis passes, you do not just stop saving or planning, you adjust. But after 1991, the United States basically said, crisis is over, it's a party time. Let's go to the party. No new containment strategy. No post-Cold War strategy. No updated doctrine. For a world that was never going to stay unipolar forever. Just this optimistic haze that if we kept expanding NATO, kept preaching democracy, kept integrating everyone into our system, the big powers would eventually play very nice with us. Let's go all the way back to 1946 for a second. George Kennan, the guy who basically invented America's Cold War playbook, sits in the Moscow and writes this famous 5,000 long telegram back to Washington. He says, the Soviet Union is not just another country with the different ideas. It is driven by an ideology that needs perpetual expansion to survive. His answers, long-term patience, but firm and vigilant containment of Russian expansive tendencies. Not war, not rollback, just steady pressure so they can't keep pushing. That single idea shaped everything from the Marshall Plan to the nuclear standoff, and it worked. The Soviet system eventually cracked under the pressure. Fast forward to 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. And instead of updating Cannon's logic for the new world, USA basically declared victory and went home. Charles Kruthammer called it the unipolar moment in foreign affairs in 1990, the United States as the unchallenged superpower with a no serious rival in sight. It felt true at that time. Russia was on its knees, China was still poor and focused inward, so we told ourselves the old rules no longer applied. But here is where it gets painful. A lot of very smart people warned us this was a dangerous illusion. In 1997, George Kennan himself called NATO expansion a fateful error in New York Times. So he said it would revive old Russian insecurities and poison relations for decades. Almost nobody listened. Then in 2014, John Mearsheimer, one of the clearest realist voices in academia, published that new famous foreign affair piece, Why the Ukraine Crisis is the West's Fault. His argument was very blunt. The taproot of the trouble wasn't Putin suddenly turning evil, it was NATO enlargement, the central element of a larger Western strategy to pull Ukraine out of Russia's orbit and into ours. And Russia had been warning United States from years that Ukraine was a red line. And USA kept pushing anyway. USA did not just expanded NATO, they expanded it while telling themselves that they are doing the world a favor, spreading democracy, stability, the end of history. But from Moscow's perspective, it looked exactly like the old containment strategy, only now aimed at a much weaker Russia. And when Russia finally pushed back, first in Georgia, then Crimea, and then full-scale war in 2022 in Ukraine, USA acted shocked. Now here is the twist, nobody knows about it. And nobody talks about it in legacy media and cable news. The Cold War never ended, it just changed its rules. And the biggest rule change is the United States never developed a coherent post-Cold War doctrine which was necessary. America had the unipolar moment and it had enjoyed that unipolar moment. But instead of crafting a grand new strategy that also acknowledged that great power competition would eventually return, America doubled down on the liberal international order as if it were destiny. USA kept expanding NATO right up to the Russia's border and assumed China would liberalize as it got richer, and they told everyone that the economic interdependence would tame nationalism. Meanwhile, Russia and China watched. They saw the pattern. They saw a West that talked universal values but practiced selective enforcement. And they started playing their own long game. Today, we are looking at the deepest Russia-China partnership since 1950. Not a formal alliance on paper, but something that functions like one in practice. Military drills together, technology sharing, Russia selling discounted oil to keep China's economy humming, while Beijing supplies dual-use components that help Moscow keep fighting in the Ukraine. And here is where it gets even clearer, because this isn't just playing out in the Eastern Europe. Look at what happened this year right in the Middle East. In the 2026 Iran war, on February 28, the United States and Israelis launched massive strikes, nearly 900 in a single day, hitting Iranian missile sites, air defense, nuclear facilities, and even taking out their top leadership. Iran struck back, and now there is a fragile ceasefire between Iran and United States with the help of Pakistan. You have to think that Iran did not fight alone, because it couldn't fight alone. Russia quietly fed Tehran real-time satellite imagery and drone upgrades, so Iranian missiles and Shahid-style drones could target US and Israeli positions more effectively. China stepped in with dual-use chemicals for solid rocket fuel. And they also provided access to their Beidou navigation system for better accuracy and continued oil purchases from Iran that kept Iran's economy collapsing under sanctions and bombardments. Both powers condemned the strikes at the UN. They also blocked UN resolutions and provided just enough covert support, intelligence, tech support, economic lifelines to stretch the conflict and drain Western resources without ever sending their own troops. This isn't just a coincidence. This is the new rules in action, a loose but coordinated axis of revisionist powers pushing back across multiple theaters at once. Ukraine, on the other hand, drains Europe and America. An Iran conflict spikes oil prices, forces USA to burn through munition stockpiles, and pulls attention away from the Pacific. Families in New York, Austin, and Chicago or London feel it at the pump. Soldiers and civilians on every side pay in blood. It all traces back to the same failure that USA never updated the doctrine. They never planned for great power competition returning in a connected, coordinated global way. So let's be honest with ourselves. The central question of this whole era is simple. Can the West finally develop a coherent post-Cold War doctrine before the new rules get written without the West? My opinion, it's too late now. They are still improvising Containment 2.0 without the intellectual honesty that Kennan brought to the original. They are treating symptoms instead of rethinking the entire map, and that more than any single missile or election is what really driving the headlines you see every night from Kyiv to Strait of Hormuz. I'm not saying we should roll over or abandon allies. I'm saying intellectual honesty matters. History shows that when great powers pretend the game has changed, when it hasn't, the bill eventually comes due, and usually paid in other people's blood and sweat and your tax dollars. The single biggest takeaway of this talk: Cold War never ended, it just changed its rules. And until we admit that, we are going to keep making the same mistakes in new packaging. If this shifted how you are reading the headlines this week, hit the subscribe buttons, because next time we are going to go even deeper into the questions people are not asking. You are watching In Focus with Dr. Adeel. Thank you very much.